If a devastating natural catastrophe struck your city one day, how would you respond? When the moment comes to make a decision, which would you put first? Protecting your loved ones or yourself? In this tale, a calamity causes a family to split apart. Find out how, in the face of peril, they will come together as a family. The worst mining catastrophe to ever occur in Sweden happened in 1961. A strong earthquake that rocked one of the cities one night left a huge crater behind. In 2020, another earthquake occurred at the same place and in one of Karuna's mining zones. A few cocktails were had by a bunch of pals. Despite his buddies' efforts to dissuade him, one of them walked outside the fence to relieve himself since he was inebriated. He was startled to find a fault line in front of him when he was peeing. He could feel the earth trembling, which heightened his concern. A few hours later, Frigga, the mining operations chief of safety, shows up to the location of the early earthquake. She receives a call from one of her co-workers telling her about the morning's events. Two couples followed the first man, who was part of a gang of youths hanging around the mining site. They located him when they went looking for him, but regrettably, while their buddy had his back turned, the two couples slipped and plunged down the fault line. Tage's ex-husband spends his birthday alone in New Karuna. Recalling the morning's catastrophe, the guy made an effort to locate his buddies after they vanished. Not long later, the spot he was standing on gave way, and he went down with it. Frigga's current lover contacts her out of the blue when she's thinking back on her time spent with her son Simon and ex-husband. In a hurry, she heads to the train station to get him. Deborah was expected to come later that night, which surprises Frigga. Frigga smiles as he explains that he intended to surprise her, and the two go together in their car. Dabir says he would be staying longer in their city because of assigned duties while traveling. Frigga told him about the difficult winter months with their long dark nights. While they were speaking, a gathering of demonstrators with placards calling for the cessation of mining to rescue Karuna obstructed their way. If they didn't clear the way, Frigga threatened to contact the police. The demonstrators wouldn't go away, so Frigga drove slowly through until a few of them parted. Her daughter Mika was among the demonstrators. She wouldn't go until half of her body was beneath the automobile. Frigga went outside to face her daughter. Mika's grandma showed up while they were fighting to mediate and make amends. They went to Frigga's place afterwards to do some funny thing. Dabir then inquired as to whether Frigga missed her son. She said how much she missed Simon, particularly on his birthday today. As a memorial to her son, Frigga is committed to making sure the mine remains secure. Tage suddenly rang the doorbell, cutting them off. He decided to stop over and see whether Simon was at home since he had indicated that he wasn't returning his calls. Tage spotted Dabir just wearing underpants as he came in. Dabir said he would wait outside as he rose up. Visibly agitated, Tage walked up to Frigga and introduced himself as the old one. Tage reluctantly accepted a handshake from Dabir. Dabir was still sitting at the table in his undies when Mika and Aya arrived. Tage attempted to speak with Frigga about the beer, but she cut him off by stating that they were divorcing. Presuming that Simon was in the other room, they lighted the candles on his cake. They were surprised to see Simon was absent. Oliver's mother Jera called Frigga and inquired about Simon. Jera disclosed that Simon was with her kid and asked Frigga to get in touch with her as soon as they saw one another. Just as Frigga was blaming Tage, there was a loud shudder. The mine called Frigga to ask for help since there were incidents outside. Tage revealed that his automobile wouldn't start by purposefully damaging it. Tage grudgingly took the front seat next to Frigga when she offered that they go on a ride together, leaving Dabir grinning sardonically. Frigga voiced her amazement at Tage's strange automobile breakdown today when they were traveling. Tage continued to ask Dabir the same questions again and over, ignoring her and making him feel uncomfortable. Dabir expressed regret, acknowledging Tage's situation. Tage was getting to be too much for Frigga, so she stopped her ex-husband from harassing her. AA went back to the home with Mika. Mika declined her invitation to play a game on the sofas since she had to go locate Simon. Frederick told the workers at the Karuna mine that 4 rescuers and 108 people were trapped in the cave-in. One employee said on the monitor that things weren't too bad, but Frigga senses something is wrong, so she decides to speak with him later. Frederick met Dabir via Frigga. Tage, who persisted in pressuring Dabir to go, followed him outdoors for some fresh air after that. Tage kept trying to pull Dabir into a talk about Frigga, but Dabir refused to back down. Tage said before departing that Frigga had the divorce papers for 6 months, but she hadn't signed them. Dabir let Tage go on his own, unfazed. A colleague of Frigga's inquired her name, dear, inside the vehicle, so she gave him an introduction. After talking about Frigga's relationship, the two ultimately took a car to the scene of the incident. Tage abruptly intervened and entered to join them. Tage tried to strike up a discussion with Frigga by approaching her and talking about Simon when they arrived at 520 underground. He tried to get near to Frigga, but she just ignored him. When they arrived at the precise spot, they joined the squad and gave the woman, an urban legend, their respects. Before proceeding with the procedure, they should pay respect since this woman is supposed to defend the mountains. They then looked about and conducted an investigation in the incident location. Frigga smacked a section of the cave wall while exploring, and since it was delicate, she struck it many times. There's a hole where it broke, but luckily nobody was badly injured. Frigga was barely slightly hurt. In the meanwhile, Mika keeps looking for Simon. When she sought to find out whether anybody had seen Simon, the response she got was that they had merely purchased drinks and then gone. They utilized a drone to penetrate the cave and evaluate the cavity's severity. It was the first time they had ever seen damage this size, and they found that it was already rather serious. When Frigga realized this, she said they had to leave right away. While her brother was playing in AA's backyard, the earth underneath them suddenly collapsed. Her father remarked that AA would shortly take her sister and that they would fence it in. Tage questioned Frigga in the cave as to whether leaving was really required. It was the first time Frigga had ever seen a cavity that huge, she said. When Frigga said that the whole city was about to fall, Tage was astounded. They sensed a quake approaching as they climbed. Together with Roberts, they dashed inside the safety chamber seeking shelter. Dabir shows up to the fire station where he was employed in the interim. In conversation with an officer, a lady relates something that happened at AA's residence. The officer informed Dabir about the several difficulties they would have as firemen after the lady departed. When Deer heard this, he was disappointed, and the officer made things worse by saying he had heard Dabir was going to become a chief in his prior position. Dabir began to back off, particularly after finding out that Tage and Frigga were only dating sometimes. Upon seeing this, the officer advised Dabir to continue to give Karuna and his connection with Frigga a chance. Mika discovers a spent Oliver in her vehicle as she keeps looking for Simon. She uses a rock to damage the car's mirror out of rage. When AA notices her and attempts to step in, they argue, and Mika ends their relationship with Aya. Dabir happens to drive to the spot as Oliver flees, and almost runs him over. He pursues them, realizing that Mika is after Oliver. Dabir stops Mika just before she is going to strike Oliver. Mika walks up to Oliver and tells him she wants to harm him. Oliver tells how his pals were gone when he woke up after being quite inebriated. He begged Mika to inform his mother so that she wouldn't freak out. He gave the address of their hangout before heading off. When Mika found out where Simon was, she promptly took the keys from Dabir. Dabir dropped the engagement ring box by mistake while he was taking the keys out of his pocket. Frigga's gang were trapped within the safety chamber in the meanwhile. As they spoke about their alternatives, Patrick, one of their buddies, became agitated. He was reassured by Erica that everything will work out. They made the decision to leave the safety chamber after a short while. They decided to take a different route when they came upon a mound of pebbles outside that was obstructing their path to the exit. Mika and Dabir discussed his connection with Mika's mother at the same time. Mika disclosed to them during their talk that her mother had not yet signed the divorce decree since she knew Tage would be devastated. They also spoke about Mika and Aya's relationship. Frigga and the others found out on the mountain that there was another barred exit. Frigga peered through a little gap in the rocks to discover another path. Tage tried to crawl in when it was his time, but gave up. It was obvious that he was claustrophobic. He was unable to get through the narrow aperture, not even when Frigga called out to him from the other side. They persuaded Tage after much encouragement and coercion, with Frigga pushing him to consider Simon. Tage became anxious in the center of the narrow hole, particularly when he became trapped. Frigga made an unsuccessful attempt to soothe him. With a steel rod in hand, Frigga made her way inside. Tage was still freaking out, but she told him to hang on to the rod so she could pull him through. With nothing else to turn, Frigga took Tage out cold. Dabir and Mika arrived in the rift zone in the meanwhile. They arrived to the sound of a ringing phone and soon found the cause. They heard the sound from the fall as soon as they stepped beyond the gate. Realizing the terrible destiny of the folks hanging around there, the two exchanged glances. Mika then tried calling Simon's phone, but none of them returned her call. Frigga dragged Tage through the narrow hole on the mountain. Tage gave Frigga a happy embrace, but she kept her distance from her. Patrick then succeeded in squeezing through the little gap as well. When Erica's time came, she was standing in the center of the narrow gap when a rock dropped on her foot. Tragically, a few pebbles also landed on Frigga's legs when she crawled inside to assist her. Though several pebbles fell on her in the process, Frigga never gave up on her. When the two guys realized this, they hauled her out of the narrow gap. Tage decided to let Patrick go first for the time being since Frigga was distraught. The two kept calling for Simon in the rift zone, but he didn't come. They found the mountain's outlet after a protracted search for a path out. Patrick made an effort to cheer up Tage and Frigga as they were starting to blame themselves for what had transpired. Frigga went outside right away and contacted Mika, who replied that they were in the rift zone. Mika clarified that Simon could be there, and Frigga told her not to go back to Karuna and to leave it to the authorities. The whole city was about to collapse, therefore they should instead go to New Karuna. Mika hastily shut off the phone to go see Aya after realizing that this was about her. Frederick contacted Frigga to talk about what had transpired after the call. Frigga hurriedly said that the city would fall in the event of another earthquake. Frigga made the quick decision to see Mika as she knew that she was going to Aya. They also sounded the alert and disseminated the information to Frederick about the predicament. Mika relates what he and Frigga discussed when Dabber asks about it in the rift zone. A lamppost suddenly collapses, thankfully missing them. Mika is adamant on meeting Aya, and Dabber attempts to talk her out of it, saying it's too risky. Still, she doesn't give up and keeps walking away. Tage mentions that Simon could be at their home when they're en route to see Mika. He adds that they will go on and that, after surviving this catastrophe, he would give Dabber another opportunity. They pursue a guy they believe to be Simon when they notice him while they are conversing. When they can no longer see the guy, they exit the vehicle and tell the others to depart the city. Dabber and Mika, in the meanwhile, show up to A's home and inform everyone right once that the city is going to fall. Cracks and flaws begin to show up in the road where Frigga is located, generating confusion among those who see these things. A fissure appears under the automobile as Mika attempts to drive off with it. The automobile becomes stuck as she tries to drive. They make an insufficient attempt to liberate the automobile. When Dabber sees this, he runs to rescue them, supporting Aya as well as the grandma. Panic sets in, causing Mika's seatbelt to get trapped and the floor to gradually descend. Dabber watches as the mountain and the buildings atop it crumble. He gets inside the vehicle fast and takes Mika's seatbelt off with care. Everything in its path was destroyed by a landslide that was caused by the fall of the mountain. It rushed through and everyone ran. They come across a lady and her kids while fleeing. Aya pulls the baby stroller as others help her. Sadly, Aya was ensnared by the speeding earth, but she was able to rescue the infant. The family got back together somewhere in the city, but Simon is still missing. Frigga and her mother find out that Simon is in Karuna at the hospital from a girl who was laying on a bed. In the midst of the confusion, Tage consoles Mika, who is stunned by A's fate. Dabber prays on her knees at an altar. Tage walks over to him, thanks Dabber for rescuing Mika, and shows out the engagement ring. He requests to see it. Frigga is told by the girl resting on the bed that she overheard Simon and his schoolmates playing games. Tage pockets the ring at the same moment. When Dabber notices this, he attempts to get it, but Tage pushes back, starting a fight. When Frigga shows there, she announces that she has discovered Simon's whereabouts. At the school, the two pause and swiftly pursue Frigga and Mika. Distressed by the happenings, Simon's classmate Hampus is standing in front of the school building. They try to speak with him, but he doesn't respond. When they quickly enter the school, they find one of Simon's friends dead. They hurry to aid after hearing screams for assistance, but rocks get in the way. Rocks fall near Frigga and Tage while they are being tied with a rope. Frigga notices a little hole and steps right through it. The little aperture is completely blocked by falling pebbles as soon as she steps inside. Frigga keeps going in search of Simon. She passes several dead corpses as she moves on. She hears someone requesting assistance as she examines one of the dead. She finds Simon's classmate Tina stabbed in the abdomen by a metal rod. Frigga searches far and wide before discovering Simon at the lip of a steep chasm. The smallest movement causes the nearby rocks to collapse. Tina keeps pleading with Frigga for help because she fears for Simon's life. Eventually, the others follow them inside. Tage gives Dabber back the ring as soon as he walks in. They meet up with Frigga again as they go forward. They try to assist Tina, but her injuries is too severe, and she dies as a result. They quickly fasten a hose around Frigga's frame and lower her to Simon's level. They go down slowly, Frigga swinging to get to Simon. But the rappel-marked rock falls away, and Frigga's thigh is impaled by an exposed metal piece. Frigga is in such misery she almost passes out. The three people up there are working non-stop to release Frigga from the impalement. Simon questioned Frigga the identity of the guy he saw above. He was presented as Dabber by Frigga. Before Simon could say anything further, Frigga gave him her word that she would end their relationship right away if Simon didn't like Dabber. She stressed how much Simon meant to her. A piece of furniture abruptly dropped as they were speaking, almost missing Frigga. Simon hurried to his mother and picked up the crumbling rock, which was where Frigga had been impaled. Mika also discovered a potential path, so she quickly traveled to Simon in spite of the wrist. Mika fastened Frigga's leg with a belt, and the two of them shoved Frigga out of the path of the impalement. Frigga was freed, but the severe agony caused her to pass out. She eventually became cognizant again. Simon was initially hoisted by being pulled up. The platform on which Tage and Simon were standing gave way under their embrace. Mika assisted Frigga in jumping onto the furniture that was dangling in the center of the hole. Then they raised Mika, but as they did so, the wire supporting the furniture began to break. Tage saw this and snatched it up, holding it tight. Even though he knew he was being electrocuted, he held on to it so Frigga wouldn't fall. He said goodbye and told them all how much he loved them before falling and being electrocuted. Dabber ran to Tage to provide first aid once he had successfully lifted Frigga. Before he died, Tage quietly gave Dabber custody of his kids and asked him to cherish and care for them. The rescuers came, stunned, a little while later. Everyone simply stood there, stunned by what they had just seen. The movie ends with Dabber pulling the ring out of his pocket, looking at Frigga, and getting a grin in return.